Next up, on time, if not a minute early. This is amazing. We have Helen Hardy from the Natural History Museum speaking on behalf of a wide range of colleagues. And the topic of Helen's talk is DiSSCo UK, Unlocking Impact from UK's Natural Science Collections. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Emma. Morning, everybody. And yeah, what great organisation by the organisers here putting me after Vanessa, because effectively this is how the UK will be trying to go on that journey that Vanessa has described. And she's covered all sorts of fascinating things that I didn't have time to squeeze into this. So that's really brilliant. Without going through all the people who've been involved in this, there are many more than are listed up there. Just to say, we have with us today Tao Chang and David Selway from the Arts Humanities Research Council. David's over there. Maybe Towers as well. So do say hello to them in the break. One particular thing we need to thank them for is helping the UK remain a node of GBIF, which is very important. So yeah, big thanks for that. And we'll talk about a few of the other things around that on the way through. One of the things DiSSCo UK is doing is we have set up a UK instance of the integrated publishing toolkit that Vanessa referred to, because the NHM ourselves don't use that. We publish direct to GBIF, but there is now a UK instance of the IPT hosted at the NHM, and we're working with a couple of you to pilot using that in the way Vanessa described. And DiSSCo UK intends to have staff to help you do that and to publish those data that already exist, as well as creating new ones. A very quick reminder. Oh no, that's not got all the pictures on it. Never mind, that's supposed to have pictures in all those blank spaces. Doesn't matter. Very quick reminder, what is DiSSCo UK? It's a 10-year, 155.6 million national programme to digitise critical mass of natural science collections around the 4 nations of the UK. It will be done through a hub and node model. So the sort of medium-sized organisations can bid to be hubs for DiSSCo for digitisation and to host teams and resources that can then also be shared with the smaller organisations. And it will also have a programme team, a kind of catalysis centre, which I'll talk a bit more about in a minute. That's kind of the research centre of the programme, and an infrastructure team. And I'm going to move on from that very messy slide. We have community updates for DiSSCo UK regularly online. Please do tell us if you'd like to be on that mailing list and you're not. I propose not to repeat those today because a lot of you have already heard all the things about what DiSSCo is doing at the moment as a programme and where we are. I'll focus today on the theme of this conference, so the impact and how we're demonstrating that through our business case. But just to let you know where we are, there is already a GBIF hosted portal, DiSSCouk.org, which has more than 16 million specimens already on it. That's all the ones UK institutions are already publishing to GBIF. The majority of those numbers are NHM and Q, but there's also others on there. The business case is progressing through the endless process of government approvals. We have 2 approvals left for the outline business case, and we then start on the full business case, but it's all going well. We're working on the technical specifications for the infrastructure, and in the summer we'll start a procurement for some of the data storage that we're going to need for that. And we have a first digitisation funding call launching this summer, which hopefully some of you will be applying to, that the AHRC will run. That will be smaller in time and money and duration than the other calls that we do later in the programme, but there will be lots of criteria to help you decide whether that's relevant to you, whether you're likely to succeed, and whether it's worth your time this time round, or whether you wait for the next one. We're all here because we're passionate about collections, and we've heard so many great stories about impact of collections over the last couple of days. And one of the nice things about working in digitisation is there's this constant flow of impact and vivid stories and exciting things to kind of think about. The list on the right is from GBIF. It's the topic tags that GBIF use. Those are the papers currently citing NHM collections and the many, many important areas that they cover. So from that list, you can pick out dozens of amazing examples of specific papers and stories. If you have people round, if you have policymakers interested or stakeholders interested, it's a really handy way, that topic tag list of saying, this is why this is important, this is what this is contributing to in terms of research. And on the left, that's a picture from a very new initiative, which I only heard about the other day from University of Reading and University of Westminster, which is an interdisciplinary arts project about light pollution and nighttime ecologies, and that is using digitised moth specimens to create these lovely light displays. So I don't know a huge amount about that one, but I thought it was another really interesting example of collections impact that we can't predict, that's kind of exciting and different and crossing boundaries of research and disciplines. Unfortunately, those really vivid stories that we've been hearing in this conference I find them amazing. They engage people. They're really, really important, but they don't by themselves make a successful case for large scale funding because they're a bit too unknown, haphazard. People don't kind of see how they hang together. They can't get figures from them of what the return on investment is for public money. So we have had to do the slightly more abstract and boring thing in the business case of tying those into a structure of saying, okay, what are we aiming to do? How is that linked to a point in time? How is it not only important, but we must do it now? How does that align with government priorities for spending taxpayers' money? How does it link to something that can be measured and that they can say, yes, this is a valid investment? And all of that builds on input from all of you. So thank you for that. Thank you for coming to our community sessions, responding to our many, many Menti questions, responding to our expression of interest, telling us exactly how these things are impactful for you and all of your stakeholders as well. The strategic objectives for DiSSCo UK as a programme really fall into three categories. So insight, capability, and innovation. The top one really is the research one. It's the put this data out there. We know it will be used for research, and we know those research are really informing some critical challenges for the planet and humanity. Objective 2 is about capacity and capability. It's about the fact that our physical collections are at risk, that we're having a drain of staff and resources, that we really need to build up that capability, and also that can then be, those skills can then be used in other types of collections as well. You know, the diversity of objects in natural science collections is such that if you have workflows for them, you probably have a workflow you can adapt for almost anything, and we hope to upskill. This also is one of the reasons why we don't put a lot of emphasis on third-party contractors digitising in DiSSCo. It's possible in your bids to say we want to do this through a third party, but we do want as much as possible to be developing skills through people we employ. And then objective 3 is about the technical innovation side of things, both in terms of workflow development and in terms of what can be done with those data sets, for example, as AI training data sets. The timeliness thing, sorry, these are very wordy slides. I do apologize. Like I say, this is the dry side of impact, but necessary, unfortunately. So this is timely because we are in a planetary emergency and people are making decisions daily about policy, about investment, private and public, which are missing vital data. They are based on the wrong baselines from the wrong period of time or the wrong information, which is full of gaps. We can help. One of the interesting things, Vanessa mentioned how many citations come through GBIF. One of the things we learned when we did some research the other year was that our UK natural science collections are cited through GBIF at a rate 40 times greater than the other data. That is how valuable they are in terms of their historical, taxonomic and geographical richness compared to the observational data that's on GBIF and the research data. So they are really critical in this space. UK collections are globally unique and significant, but at risk. That's the thing that links to Objective 2, which I think you all know enough about that I don't need to go into it. And the UK, there is a point in time technologically where it is now cheaper and more efficient to digitize. Those data are then more impactful in what you can do with them. There are new techniques that you can apply to them, whether that's for research or for commercial reasons. And then that feeds back in a kind of virtuous circle to how we do it in the first place and to how the value of the collections are understood and how we invest in them. This is a large sum of taxpayers' money in government terms. 155 million is not a very large sum, alarmingly, but it is a lot of money. So we did have to justify how we link to the government's 5 missions. So in terms of economic growth, we are driving technological innovation and we're unlocking the potential of these data from natural science collections. There's a slightly tenuous link to being a clean energy superpower, which is more about climate and net zero, but I think that does hold. And breaking down barriers to opportunity by making these data and collections much more accessible than they are physically. There's perhaps in some ways a stronger link to the AI Opportunities Action Plan, which specifically references cultural data and collections data as one of the UK's data assets. I know there are always 2 sides to anything AI related, but nevertheless, it's a very important link. And sometimes it's not enough just to make the case that we link to government, we have to make the case that we link to a particular funding department. So happily, DSIT want to accelerate innovation through world-class research. That's very much what we're doing. They want to use technology for good, also very much what we're all about, and drive forward a modern digital government where people, have access to things and can use them. So again, very complementary there. We In the business case, we have to, there are 5 business cases within a government business case. This is the outline business case. One of them is economic. We have to make a case that this investment will bring a return that's economically valuable for the UK. And we do that by looking at what benefits it brings and which of those benefits can reasonably be monetised. So the five benefits that have been monetised in the DiSSCo UK business case are the value of staff skills created. So the kind of things like potential increases in salary or numbers of people employed that we'll do through the programme. The value of data to UK researchers, which you've heard about from Vanessa and that we've talked about previously. Last year I came and said a few things about that. The value of global knowledge created, the cost savings to UK host organisations from that better kind of triage in terms of digital versus physical, and cost savings to UK researchers. There's also so many other benefits. And again, very dry slide, apologies. What I'd like to be doing is giving you a vivid case study on each one of these, but A, we don't have time, and B, that will come later in the programme when we've done more of them. But there are direct use benefits. So things around how we manage collections, things around training, things around time savings and policy making benefits. There are indirect use benefits. So things like avoided costs. If the border force can correctly identify whether something is a protected species, for example, there are cost savings involved in that. If they misidentify, then that costs them money that this is saving. And there are benefits that are slightly more kind of one step back in terms of altruism, understanding that these data are valuable, that they may help feeling better because of that. And all of those things are listed in our business case and come out of all of your collections, not just the ones at the NHM. We ran an expression of interest recently. Many of you, I think 94 of you replied. Thank you for that. This shows that there is the engagement that we've always said there is with this process, that there is the interest in digitising. And yeah, you've got lots of stuff up there about what people ticked, about why they're interested in DiSSCo UK. So not just the digitisation, but access to training, the network, the infrastructure itself for the data. So it really shows that there is a way to deliver this and that it will be impactful. So thank you very much for completing those, and just do a couple of minutes at the end about how we'll drive impact within the programme and what we mean by catalysis. So the Catalysis Centre in DiSSCo will have 2 functions. It will aim to accelerate digitisation. One of the things we have to do is drive up the rates through the programme to achieve the aims we want to achieve. So that Catalysis Centre will help us carry on doing work like we're doing with the robot arm on there, although also a lot of software work, which is slightly less alarming to think about around collections. You'd be amazed, though. It is incredible. You can see it there. Those are real. They're handling specimens, but they're still actual specimens, and it has yet to do any serious damage to any of them. So that's good. And also, secondarily, the Catalysis Centre will be about accelerating impact. So it will be about developing tools for researchers, developing things like knowledge graphs that bring our data together with other data sources that kind of do that mapping of the biosphere and give people new routes into the data for research. So really accelerating those research impacts, which we know will happen anyway. They're happening organically with the data that's already on GBIF, but we want to really be pushing those along. Just to give you an idea of the opportunities there, DSIC gave us a little bit of money separately to DiSSCo, but very complementary to the AI team at the NHM over the last 6 months or so, to run pilots with some of you around the UK, looking at various different uses of AI. And those pilots included data transcription. They included generation of alt text descriptions for online collections, which is a really useful thing to automate because it's very time consuming otherwise. Automated image quality checking, a chatbot interface for collections, which is really fun, and a prototype reptile species identification for the border force to use to say, is this handbag made of a protected species? And if so, we confiscate it and you will be in trouble. So really interesting diversity of possible applications for these technologies that hopefully, and just to comment on one that's particularly relevant, I think, in the digitisation context in a simpler kind of way. The pilot with Lyme Regis was about extracting data from geology index cards and was looking at kind of 98% time savings and a really good level of accuracy equivalent to a human being in terms of transcribing those data. So I think that's the sort of thing where there's a very immediate application within DiSSCo that we can extract more data better and faster and cheaper if we can apply some of these technologies to the images that we're taking. That's a super quick run through. I could talk to you all day about these topics, but the card is waving, and rightly so. Not every meeting has a glitter ball, but as does every meeting room. So yes, hopefully we'll all have one of these days. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. That was fantastic. My quick comment first before the questions come is it's amazing work that DiSSCo are doing and that you are doing for DiSSCo. And obviously, DiSSCo are advocating for the museums that are part of their membership network. And there's ourselves and maybe others in this room who are not part of DiSSCo, but I think we can all benefit from what you're doing. Reading the business cases and, doing very similar business cases for our own museums or our own countries and things like that. So even if you're not part of DiSSCo, there is a lot of benefit that we can all take from it. So thank you. That's my phone making some noise here. Are there any questions in the room? Aoife?
I'm wondering, I'm very interested in the dry business cases because it's part of my job that I have to put those together as well. And were you able to establish any economic benefit around culture and cultural heritage and the importance of culture and the impact of cultural heritage? Because I was at a conference recently in Dublin, and there's a unit in Historic England that are looking at that at the moment. And I'm wondering, did you use any of their data, or were you looking at that yourselves, or is there any overlap?
There's a really interesting kind of emerging field of study about that in government as well. There's a guy called Harman Sega who does some amazing work there, who's very much worth checking out on LinkedIn or wherever. They've done several reports, and there's been reports through towards a national collection. The AHRC did some research about economic benefits of cultural heritage collections. A lot of it is more general, so it didn't make a good top line input to a business case for natural science collections specifically. So we were trying to say specifically, why should you make this investment rather than a different investment in the UK collections sector? So we've certainly looked at it. We haven't used it directly, but yeah, there's some really interesting stuff out there, and it's very much a growing field, I think, valuing these collections and their impact in all sorts of spheres. A lot of it also on the cultural side is looking at willingness to pay. So it's that kind of, would it be valuable to you, person X, if this collection were online and you could go and kind of browse it online? And those are good things to measure, but slightly limiting in some respects. So I'm kind of looking at the things which broaden out beyond that a bit.
Anybody else? Okay, where. Oh, hello.
I obviously I'm not dissimilar from Aoife in being concerned about the kind of business case side of this, because if we ever want to get funding to do anything similar in Ireland, we're going to need to have a really strong piece. One of the things that I'm quite interested in is the application of things like the AI for identification. So in terms of the border force, for example, has that been broadened out to things like invasive species identification for things like food security, biosecurity, all that kind of stuff?
I think there are instances of people doing that. I haven't been involved in any of those projects, but I know of some kind of globally, certainly, that have done that. And also quite a lot of the nature apps now use AI for ID, and they're really good, but they also, in a sense, they make our case for us, because they're great if you point a camera at something that's often around people and that's reasonably common and that's been observed a lot, because they use observational photography to do that ID. But they're no good if something is a bit more elusive or rare. And again, that's where collections can come in without going and disturbing those elusive rare things. Even if you could afford to in the wild, you can have images to use for ID. So there's certainly a lot of potential there, I think, to broaden out from what's being done now. Presumably,
there's quite a large financial benefit from preventing invasives from taking hold and actually impacting food security. Has that been factored into some of those calculations? And if so, what kind of order of magnitude of costs are we talking about there? Because what happens if the food chain gets disrupted for a particular crop?
So one of the things I spoke about last year was a report we'd done with Frontier Economics, which establishes 2 billion of potential benefit over 30 years from digitising the UK collections, taking that top-down view of, and one of the 5 areas that looks at is invasive species. And actually what they found was it was easier to make a case around misidentification and then resource that's put into preventing something that wasn't a problem in the first place, and wasted resource. But yeah, they looked at kind of both sides of that. So do take a look at that, I can send a link if that's of interest. But we do cite that report obviously in our business case, but it doesn't quite match up to government Green Book criteria in terms of economic. They prefer a kind of bottom-up approach to developing that economic case, which is why that would have been, I think, a 10 times return on investment. What we're quoting in the business case is more like a 2.5 times return on investment economically that we can really be more confident of proving. But actually, I think even that 10 times was fairly conservative because we only looked at 5 areas for the UK. There's obviously more areas and it's kind of global. So I'm reasonably confident that this is a good way to spend money, but persuading other people is the trick, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, guys, we're running out of time now. So I think any more questions will have to wait till the tea break. And when we can also, I think, ask Helen about this cobot robot and the damage it may or may not have done in elections. So thank you very much, Helen.